Hello to those of you still joining us. We're going to make a start in a little bit, so make yourselves comfortable, and we'll probably make a start in about 30 seconds. Okay, let's make a start. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Feras, and I will be your facilitator for the next hour. I'm joined by Dom from the Don't Lose Hope charity, and we're going to introduce ourselves in a little bit. But before we start to do that, just to let you know, this session is around understanding and overcoming anxiety and loneliness. So this is just to give you a quick overview around some of the topics. So we are going to go through the agenda and what to expect, but it's really important to recognize that this is just to raise awareness around the topics and to point you in the right direction. So let's have a quick look around the agenda and what we're going to cover. So first of all, me and Dom are going to introduce ourselves so you get to know who we are and who's involved and what to expect. Then we're going to look at anxiety. So what is anxiety? What its causes? How do the chemicals in our brain affect how we feel? And what can make some people really anxious? Then we're going to discuss loneliness, and this is a very hot topic at the moment, especially after the pandemic, and the fact that more than ever, people have been experiencing loneliness and isolation. And we're going to discuss, how does it impact individuals differently, in terms of demographics and age and gender and all of those things. More importantly, what can we do to support ourselves and support others? If you're suffering from it, what can you do about it? But also, how can we look out for our colleagues, the people around us, loved ones? What can we do to help? And more importantly, where can we get more information and help and support further on? And then finally, we're going to talk about the Don't Lose Hope charity, where Dom is going to discuss the great work they do within the charity. So let's introduce ourselves. My name is Feras. I'm a business psychologist, and I've been a facilitator for over 10 years now. And I specialize around human interaction, leadership, management. But one of my favorite topics is around understanding resilience, understanding how our emotions affect how we interact in terms of emotional intelligence and EQ. Dom, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi there. So yeah, I'm Dom Brister. It was actually my wife that founded the charity, and I left teaching after 15 years and are now fully supporting it and working here every day. So yeah, currently sat in the community garden. It's a shame you can't see on the video, but yeah, sat in the garden with people wandering in and out, just hopefully resting.
Fantastic. We can hear the background noise. It's lovely. Dom, can I just ask you to put yourself on mute so as we go along, because there is a bit of disruption, but otherwise, great to have you on board.
Will do. Cheers.
So just to get to know where everybody is at the moment. So I'm just here in Hertfordshire, in Hitchin. So if you could just type a question in the chat box, let's try the chat box and find out where you are all currently. That'd be lovely. So where's everybody attending from? So we can test out the chat box. Feel free to use the chat box at any time to interact. Feel free to unmute yourselves and interact. Thank you. So Paula's in Cheshire. Lovely. Thank you for that. So I'm imagining that we've got people from all over the UK, maybe even abroad as well, which is great. So I think I need to open up the question box, but I'll leave that for a bit. So let's let's now move on to the topic of anxiety. So the reality is, why are we having this session? The reality is that we've just gone through one of the most momentous events in the past 20 years, which is the pandemic. And it's had a big effect on people, individuals, and we're still studying these effects. There was a big study that found that more than half of adults, 60%, and over 2/3 of young people have said that mental health got worse during lockdown. And what's really interesting is that young people have suffered more than the older people. So mental health has been affected, anxiety has been affected, and lots of people found their mental health decline. And one of the causes around this is the lack of social support, the lack of people's normal coping strategies, but also the real anxieties that the pandemic caused. It was a real world event that people were worried about their loved ones, but also their own health, as well as their jobs. What's fascinating is the effects of this has still lingered on, even though, we're now out of lockdown, we're still being affected by it. So not being able to see people, not being able to go outside, having anxiety about family, the coronavirus, people feeling bored and lack of interaction. And also what was fascinating as well is the disruption to sleep schedule was massive. So, and loneliness was always affected, but it's got much worse during lockdown. So 72% said loneliness made their mental health worse. So these anxiety and loneliness was always an issue before the pandemic. It's really brought it to the fore. And it's really important we recognize this and we do something about it. So what can cause anxiety? So most people experience stress and anxiety at some point in their lives. So stress is usually a response to an external cause. So, we can all have a tight deadline or workload. You can have an argument with somebody. If it's usually having an argument with my wife, it's usually my fault, but it can cause us stress. Anxiety is the feeling of apprehension or dread where there's no real threat. So stress can move on and go away. Anxiety can persist after the concern has passed. And an anxiety disorder is where it can affect our day-to-day life, where it can, avoid doing things or not be able to interact. So let's have a look at some of the chemicals around this. So human beings, when we're faced with a challenge, a threat, we can react in 3 different ways. So let's imagine, hundreds of thousands of years ago when human beings used to live in caves or huts and would have a big saber-toothed tiger coming after us. We would react in 3 ways. Our brain would pump lots of adrenaline and cortisol. It would go to our muscles. It would make us very focused. It would make us stronger, aggressive, so that we're able to fight the threat. Or we pump all the blood to our legs and to our extremities, so we're able to run away and avoid it. So that's the flight response. The third response is the freeze response, where it's rabbit in the headlights, where we just lie dead and we can't react. Now, these responses are designed to save our lives. They were designed to work in seconds for a short period and for us to survive or not. Now, what's fascinating is in the modern world, our brain fails to distinguish between a physical threat and an existential one. So what does that mean? So basically, we find it difficult to tell the difference between a car about to hit us and someone giving us too much work to do. We find it difficult to tell the difference between someone being rude to us on the phone and someone, about to punch us or a car about to crash. Our brain still pumps these stress chemicals to save our life. And flight and freeze are usually where anxiety comes in. Our brain treats anxiety as a way to avoid threats, hide, stay safe. It's too dangerous to go outside. Now, I'm not going to go into detail around the structure of the brain, and this is massively simplified. But most of the flight freeze response is in the limbic system, where the amygdala is. So that contains all the hormones that flood our brain when we feel under threat or in danger. Now that makes decisions in microseconds, not in seconds. Now, luckily for us, we have the more modern part of the brain. The part of that is the cerebral cortex. Now, the limbic system reacts in microseconds. The cerebral cortex, much slower, much more analytic, much more of the thinking brain. So luckily for us, we're able to manage some of these chemicals and manage some of these feelings through changing how we think about them. So we're about to do a little poll. So I'm going to read you a little disclaimer around it. So these are optional and anonymous to the presenter and panelists and all audience members. However, they are available in a report that is generated at the end of each webinar. So this report is only used by the marketing team for understanding insights, such as attendee numbers. They will not analyze or share any poll results. So Gemma very kindly will share the poll with you guys. And it'd be just really interesting to do that diagnosis around yourself.
Hi, also, I've just launched the poll.
Fantastic.
About 30 seconds or so to answer. It's about another 7 seconds to go, and then I'll read out the results. Okay, brilliant. So results are in, kind of a range. So 1 to 2, 19%, 2 to 3, 43%, all of them 24%, none for 10%, and 5% prefer not to say. So yeah, majority of people are really feeling some of these issues.
Yeah, so thank you for that. And it's important to recognize this is not a tell-all. This is just a rough questionnaire. And what we recommend is if these feelings are persistent, please visit a medical professional, talk to your GP or get some professional help. But this is showing you that actually this is affecting a lot of people. It's affecting a lot of us. So, and if it's not affecting you, I promise you it's affecting either somebody in your family or somebody in your office. So this is why it's really important that we actually have a look at this and start to deal with it. So how can we recognize it in ourselves and others? So the physical symptoms can be, butterflies in your stomach, shortness of breath, hot flushes, increased in heartbeat, increased perspiration, dry mouth, tightness in your chest, wanting to use the toilet more often, feeling sick or shaky, choking sensation or palpitations. Now, the reason these physical symptoms happen, remember, is to deal with a physical threat. Our body deals with this so that we're able to fight or run away. Anxiety is when we're not under the physical threat, but we feel this constantly. So the psychological symptoms is like feeling panicky or frightened for no reason, feeling that we're not going to lose control or have a heart attack or be constantly ill. We're going to faint or embarrass ourselves. People are always looking at us, observing us, feeling detached from the environment, the people in it, and feeling like wanting to try to escape from the situation on an edge. So when I'm feeling anxious, I want to avoid people. I want to avoid situations. And behavioral, taking taxis or avoiding public transport instead of taking taxis instead of public transport or walking when we don't want to, making excuses in order to avoid going out, at the end of rows of cinemas or in the pub near the exits, avoid going out alone, rushing out of situations, only shopping when it's quiet, avoiding minor roads and crossing streets to avoid people. So if you notice somebody's doing this and it's impacting their lives, these might be signs that they're suffering from anxiety. So how does all of this link to loneliness? So most people tend to think of loneliness about means experiencing unpleasant emotions, anxiety, sadness, or distress. But the important part is feeling social isolation, not being able to have friendships. Now, this is the key thing. Feeling lonely is not the same as being alone. Any one of us can be completely alone and perfectly happy. And you could absolutely be in a crowd or around people and feel completely isolated and alone. So anxiety and loneliness are both a cause and a symptom. So when we feel anxious, we want to isolate ourselves because we feel we're under threat. And then we feel anxious that we're lonely. So it becomes that negative cycle. So when we feel lonely, we feel anxious. And when we feel anxious, we can feel lonely. And that's the trap. So we need to deal with both issues. So we're going to do another poll. And we would like to find out, how the pandemic's affected working from home and returning from home. So the reality is with hybrid working at the moment, some people are able to go into the office. Some people are still working from home constantly. Some people, might not have people around. So it'd be interesting to find out how your organization has dealt with working from home. So Gemma, are you able to launch that poll, please?
Yep, sure. So again, I'll give another 30 seconds. Okay, yeah, so we're collecting responses now. That's good. Okay, so I'll give a couple more seconds and I will share the results now.
Lovely.
So 3% for being forced to go back into the office. Vast majority, 69% there's now a hybrid or flexible approach. 16% choosing based on business needs. 9% saying they're still working remotely, and 3% prefer not to stay. So yeah, hybrid and flexible is the outright winner there.
Yeah, so it's really fascinating how much things have changed in the past few years. So companies used to ask us, how's the world of work going to change before the pandemic? And we used to say we can see, hybrid working happening in 10 years. And what the pandemic's done is it's accelerated. It's done it on steroids. And what the result of it is some companies have done it, they've adapted and they've done the flexible approach. Others have said, no, the business needs, you need to come back. Others have said, no, it's full time, it's up to you. And what's important is to understand, is there the social support around it? What are we doing to keep team cohesion? How are we checking that people aren't feeling isolated when they are working from home? Or how can we make sure that nobody's feeling left out if somebody's working from home and somebody else is in the office? So if you're a manager, you need to think about these things and how can you make people feel included instead of isolated either way. What's interesting also is, I work internationally and the difference in different cultures. So in Europe, a lot more people have gone back to the office full time, much more higher percentages. In America, it's hit and miss around the hybrid approach. So actually, we're quite world leaders at the moment in terms of hybrid working in the UK. So what's the impact of loneliness? And I'm going to get Dom to talk about this in a little bit, some of the impacts that he's seen around loneliness and anxiety. So loneliness, particularly when chronic, has been linked with lots of health problems. So depression, insomnia, stroke and heart disease, obesity. So loneliness increases pain. People who are more likely to experience loneliness are more likely to be suffering from higher levels of reported pain. So actually that social support can lower chronic pain. And also they're much more likely to hide their feelings or suppress their emotional expression. So the dichotomy is that people who are lonely are less likely to seek support and reject the social support offered. So there's a paradox. Those who report higher loneliness want more interpersonal needs, but they're likely to get more negative feelings by being rejected and avoiding social contact. So it becomes that negative loop of wanting it more, but then being affected by not having it. And it seems that people who suffer, more likely to suffer from loneliness, tend to have negative coping strategies. So either they'll blame an unpleasant experience, or blame themselves and blame others, it wasn't my fault, or they'll see things as, it's the end of the world, or if this will happen, they'll always see the worst case scenario, or they will do the stiff upper lip, and as a gender bias, men are much more likely to do this, hiding your feeling, burying them deep. Oh, nothing affects me, or rejecting or withdrawing. So avoiding those social situations, even being invited, turning it down, or do that dwelling things. And that's what I used to be quite guilty of, having it go round and round your head. So, and actually, the people who are lonely tend to least likely be able to do that cognitive reappraisal. What that means is, putting things in context and saying, you know what, I could learn from this, or, if this happened, let's move on. So instead of treating something as a setback and as something to learn from, it's treating it as a personal failure. So our attitude has a big impact around this. So before we go on to what we can do to overcome it, I'd like to hear a bit more from Dom. Dom, do you want to add anything to what we've discussed around loneliness and anxiety?
Yeah, hugely. So ultimately, sat in the garden now, everything that you've said there, I could give 30 or 40 names of people that come in and highlight it. Even when we've got a shed full of 25, 30 guys all talking and pottering, they can still feel lonely. It's really hard, and you talk about the gender bias. It's really hard for guys to seemingly overcome that. You are the provider. Again, when you were talking about anxiety, and you talked about the caveman analogy, it's one that we really use on a daily basis. Guys automatically assume that they have to be the breadwinner, they have to be the strong person, they have to be the one fighting that saber-toothed tiger. When actually, do you know what? Things are changing, things are shifting, and you don't need to tick that alpha male box every minute of every day. And I think certainly for men, it's been a real eye opener, this pandemic. And as you say, working from home and working internationally, and actually a lot of the things that you were perceived to supposed to be doing, you don't have to. And the sort of the anxiety and the loneliness, well, actually, when you open up and talk to someone else, suddenly you've got two people feeling lonely. You realise you're not the only person feeling like that, and suddenly there's a bit of strength in numbers. And when people start accepting that actually being lonely is normal, being anxious is normal, and then how you can deal with it, it really does open the doors for people to start being able to deal with it. And then what becomes stress can actually be dealt with on a personal basis.
Brilliant. So great insight there. And actually, that poll backs up what you're saying, the fact that actually, so a lot of this is normal and we can deal with it. And it's about, the fact that we need to change our attitude around, the alpha male thing, or not seeking help. Thank you for that, Dom. So next we're going to talk about what we can do to overcome it. So what can we do about it, or how can we, more importantly, help others? So our emotional response, which originates in the limbic system that we talked about, the primitive brain, the lizard brain, affects our instinctual reaction filtered through the human filter. So how you feel is normal. It's okay to feel anxious. It's okay to feel. What we need to affect and control is our thought processes around it. That's the bit we have control over. And by building resiliency around the instinctual reaction, we can change our response. So in other words, by changing our thought patterns and our habits, we can change our response, which affects our feelings. So there's a lovely cognitive triangle around this. And basically, we tend to think that our emotions affects our thoughts, which affects our behaviors, which is absolutely true. It becomes a feedback loop. Whereas actually what we need to recognize is that our behaviors and our thoughts also affect our emotions. So we need to think about what do we need to, how does somebody who's not feeling anxious or lonely behave or not behave? What do they need to do? What are the thoughts that are related to that? And what emotions do they have? By changing our behaviors and thoughts, it can start to affect our emotions. So we're going to talk a bit more about that. Dom, do you want to add anything to the cognitive triangle?
Yeah, sorry, I've just moved to the greenhouse now. It's a really simple. It's a really simple way, and as I said to you previously when we were planning this triangle as a graphic, when you show it to young kids and say, actually, the way you think and the way you feel can affect the way you behave, and I really, I tend to put myself out as a scapegoat for it and explain that, you know, before I come to see you in the morning, I might be feeling nervous, but if I then let those feelings stop me, then it'll stop me getting out into the world. And then if I stop that, it'll stop the way that you feel about this. And all these things can be a trigger from one feeling. When actually, if you turn around and say, well, do you know what? It might be this, but actually it won't be that bad. Suddenly that whole triangle can be shifted. And to make that explicit to guys, you know, under the age of 10, 11, 12 even, to know that actually your thoughts and feelings affect your behaviors. And then you speak to the teachers that we work with and the adults, and they say no one's actually highlighted that. They've not made it explicit that actually this is how the brain works, and you can override it quite easily. And yeah, making that explicit link is really quite powerful.
Love it. Thank you for that, Dom. Great insight. And what's related to that, and Dom talked about, you know, school children, is our mindset. And this is something that's being taught to school children all over the UK, which is lovely, is the fact that, you know, we need, by changing our mindset sometimes, it can change how we feel. So part of having a fixed mindset is thinking, you know, I am the way I am, I can never learn, avoiding challenges, you know, getting feedback, being defensive or taking it personal or blaming others and easily discouraged. Whereas by developing a growth mindset, we need to recognize, you know, we can get better, we can always improve, and we can embrace challenges. You know, it's okay to try, and it's an opportunity to change. You know, the only way you can get better is by putting the effort in. And feedback is always useful. We can learn from it. And this is the important one: is setbacks, is seeing it as making changes and a way to learn. So somebody taught me this. The word fail should stand for first attempt in learning. So it's very cheesy, but I love it. Now, there's a great story around this with the word yet and adding the word yet that Dom shared with me. Dom, do you want to share it with the rest of the group?
Yeah, not a problem. I'm also going to pick you up on one little thing.
Please.
You just said it's okay. I can't remember what you just said then. It was in my head as I was tying the garlic up. You said it's okay. It's okay to try. That was it. You said it's okay to try. I'm going to switch that and just link with what you've just said as first attempt in learning. It's okay to fail.
Yeah.
You know, in every single one of my lessons with all the kids that I've worked with over however many years and in the shed and with most people I work with in terms of the outdoors, they all kind of step back because the first thing I tell them is, right, I'm going to show you how to fail. And it's not the showing them what to do to get it wrong. It's what to do in terms of the resilience of, right, I tried that. And I always talk about, you know, James Dyson. How many times did he fail? I think there was something like 10,000 attempts at getting his cyclonic vacuum cleaner working. You know, he stuffed up however many thousand times, but look at it now. Yes, and my little story, bless, on the fixed mindset and growth mindset is Carol Dweck, who's written, you know, countless books on the mindset, and all of her research is on with American young people. And I was a massive believer in the growth mindset and worked very well with it. But I said, actually, and I was quite vocal on social media that I didn't think that it worked fully with the UK population and the UK children, because it's very much, you know, lots of clapping and cheering and, you know, self-promotion, which British people don't do very well. So I put this out there, and then I got invited to a talk, and then I got invited to have a conversation over lunch with Carol and put my side of things forward. And she took it. And what's really nice is the new book that she's writing is going to link with the English, putting her research from the American side in with the English side, because ultimately we are very good in this country at taking everyone else's research and saying, yeah, this works, but actually it's got to work with the way that our society works as well. You know, the way that the American society works with all their growth mindset research is huge, but our society doesn't back it up in the same way, so our education system isn't set up in the same way. So as you said when we were talking and planning this through, you know, you've got first-hand experience of someone coming home and saying we're doing something about the growth mindset. Now that's massive for me to know that 3 or 4 years ago when we were championing it, it's now coming through the system. So it's a really, really strong, just changing that sentence, I can't do it, to I can't do it yet.
Yeah, and that's what I have on the screen at the moment. What's lovely, Dom, is the fact that my daughter is 8 years old. She comes back and they talk about, you know, growth mindset. They call it the wise owl. They call the fixed mindset being a foolish dragon.
Yeah.
And my daughter now, before she'd get frustrated when she couldn't, you know, draw or do some art, and now she says, I can't do this yet, or I call her on it. You know, whenever she says I can't do this or I'm not good at this, I put the word yet in, and that completely changed her attitude. And what's brilliant, my son, please don't.
Sorry, I don't want to linger on this point. Just a question for you, and again anyone else that's listening in on this bit. Have they ever mentioned colours to your daughter?
Not that I know of, but they might have done.
Because there's another model that some people use, and again, when people are struggling, they've got a little green sticker or a pen, or a little red sticker and a pen, and literally they'll draw a little dot on their index finger of one hand and then the index finger of the other, and actually you get to make the decision, you know, which are you being today. You know, you talk about the green dragon and things like that, and ultimately you can turn around and say, look, are you green or red today? Really simple. Are you green or red? Which way are you looking at this problem? Green finger, red finger. And it's a really simple, just a little simple visual judge to say, oh, do you know what? Maybe I need to be a bit more green today.
Yeah, thank you. I haven't heard of that, but I don't know if they actually do it. I will mention it, but I will find out from my daughter. Love it. Thank you for that, Dom. So all these techniques, you know, I've known about, you know, fixed and growth mindset for years, and I've been teaching it for years. What's lovely is the fact that it's now filtering down to schools, and it's being, you know, done through the prism of, you know, our own society. There is adapting it to that. So, you know, I'll share the story quickly. My wife is very capable. She went to Cambridge University. She's very bright. One of the things she struggled with, actually, when she came to the workplace, she found it very stressful, is the first time one of her projects failed. Because up to that point, she'd never failed before. You know, everything she'd done, she found relatively easy. She's one of those jammy people who just, you know, academically could just handle most things. And then she worked on a project and didn't go well at work. And she found that a big psychological, you know, she found it like she'd personally failed as a person because it never happened to her before. And actually, that's one of the things she'd had to learn, and through that experience, is actually it's not a personal failure. This is just a learning step. And one of the things they've got her to do is to come back to her school with the other bright young ladies to talk about this. And actually, this failure is part of learning. It's not okay to fail, and it's important that we learn and we build. And actually, the real failure is not actually, you know, trying in the first place. So think about coping strategies. It's the positive and negative loops. So poor coping strategies can lead to negative thinking, not sleeping, not eating well, which, you know, starts to affect everybody. Limited ability to cope, increased adrenaline, engage the brain in a negative way. So it's the negative spiral. And I don't know about you, but when I can't sleep, I just can't cope. Now, what we need to do is actively do the positive coping strategy. So this is where we do positive thinking or build hope. Try sleep the right amount. eating on schedule, and good nutrition. Actively talk to others and build that support network. Acknowledge and create space. And that's where we stop that negative loop and spiral and actually doing it positively. So our actions and our behavior affect how we feel. So if we don't feel like doing those things, our brain and our body's lying to us. It's saying, hide, you feel anxious, don't do it. Actually, that's where we need to actively do those positive things that will help us. So what can we do about it? So part of it is we need to remove some of the limiting beliefs, and appreciate the positive moments that might otherwise miss. So it's looking at the glass as half full instead of half empty. Notice your negative thoughts and try and place them with positive ones. Change how you feel and support the vision. So part of that is reframing, look after your inner self and reframe that negative self-thought instead of just saying, you idiot, why did you do this? Or I'm not doing this, or I'm frustrated, or these changes are too much, or there's no way this is going to work. We need to change the script to say, you know what, I can do the hard things. I can learn from it. We're strong and we will adapt. This will give us an advantage. So what's interesting about negative talk and negative thoughts is if I tell you now, don't think of a pink elephant, what are we all doing? Thinking of a pink elephant. So it's about changing some of the negative language. I mean, I have to do this with my kids. My temptation with my kids is, don't climb, don't hit your sister, don't run around. And actually what I've had to do is learn to say to them, please be careful. Please do this. It's talking to ourselves and to others about what we want to happen instead of what we don't want to happen. About the positive outcome instead of the negative outcome. And big part of anxiety and loneliness is feeling we don't have control. So this model, which was developed by Dr. Stephen Covey, is called the circle of influence. So the circle of concern is the outer circle. So these are all the things, the unlimited things that we have no control over. The weather, the traffic, the financial market, the war in Ukraine and Russia. And actually, by focusing on our circle of concern, it raises our anxiety. We feel we're not in control. It's like banging your head against the wall, feeling nothing's going to change. What we need to focus on and list is the things within our control. That's our attitude, our values, our choices, our direction, what we want. And also recognize who or what we can influence. So by focusing more time and effort within our circle of control, the circle of control gets bigger. The circle of control gets bigger, circle of concern gets smaller. So if there's something in our lives that's making us unhappy and affecting us, and we have the power to change it, we have to change it. If we are unable to change it, we need to be able to live with it. Are we maybe it's changing our attitude? Am I making a mountain out of a molehill? Can I put something in place that's going to make it less stressful? And if we can't change something and we can't live with it, absolutely can't live with it, then it might be worth recognizing maybe we need to move ourselves out of that specific situation. So recognizing we always have a choice is very empowering. I choose to do this, or I choose to be in this situation. And by focusing my time and energy on the things I can control and affect, my sense of control, that anxiety goes down massively. So a big part of that, newspapers, magazines, social media is designed to amplify the things that can go wrong, the things out of our control. Fear and anxiety sells. Fear and anxiety creates more clicks. So recognize, only expose yourself to information when you want to and you have control over. So we're going to discuss lots of strategies that people do to deal with anxiety or loneliness, but actually the best ones are the ones that people have. So if you type in the chat box and share your strategy with the group about what you do when you feel anxious. And Gemma can hopefully read some of them for us.
Yeah, I can read any comments. As I said,
Fantastic.
if you feel comfortable, or if anyone feels comfortable.
So what do you do?
So we've had a couple already.
Brilliant.
So first person said they'll focus on reality only. Another person said journaling helps for anxiety, which I've heard a lot about journaling in the past too. I'm not sure if you've heard much about that, Feras.
Journaling is really powerful. I use it, and what I tend to find, if I'm lying in bed and I can't sleep, writing the things that I'm feeling anxious about down tells my brain, actually, you've dealt with it and you can sleep now. So I'm not somebody who naturally writes a diary or anything like that. But actually, since I've started journaling, it's had a massive effect on the quality of my sleep. So thank you for that. Anything else, Gemma?
Yeah, so we got breathing exercises. And someone said connecting with people online helps with meeting new people for loneliness, which that makes sense, definitely. And then another person's commenting on deep breathing, visualizing a sense of calm, overcoming, visualizing a warm, glowing orange light, giving healing energy. That sounds like a really lovely visualization.
So the reason breathing works and deep breathing is because it sends a signal to our brain that we're no longer in danger. So these chemicals that are flooding our body, the adrenaline, the cortisol, all of these stress chemicals, is to save our life. When we do breathing exercises, it tells our brain we're actually safe. And also those, visualizing bright lights, all of those things also reinforce that effect. So whenever you're feeling anxious, doing a breathing exercise is very powerful. So there's lots of them. The easiest one to remember, not because it's necessarily the best, but the easiest one is the 4-4-4. And that's where you take a deep breath in through your nose for 4 seconds, or count to 4. Hold it in to count to 4, and breathe out through your mouth for count to 4. And if you do this 3 or 4 times, it starts to have a really, really strong effect. Now, there's lots of them. There's Gemma, you do the 7-3-2, I believe. Is that the one you do? Can't remember.
Yeah, that's one that I came across that. That was a really interesting one.
Yeah. So there's lots of them, and if you do any form of yoga or mindfulness, they focus on it. And the whole point of this is being present in the now, not worrying about what's happened in the past because you can't change it, not worrying about the future because it doesn't exist. The only thing that exists in reality is the here and now, and being present in the here and now. Thanks for that. Anything else that's come up, Gemma?
Yeah, sorry, just to quickly say, it's a 4-7-8, not 7-3-2. There's all the numbers get mixed up. But yeah, so other people have said that they've listened to podcasts, and there's one that's really helped this person and help them understand why they're anxious, which then gives them strength to control it. Headspace, which a Headspace app has really helped this other person, and the organisation provides this. That's really good from an organisation's perspective. So I know one of my friends really uses Headspace as well, really finds it beneficial.
Headspace is really fantastic app, and the website's really good. Also contact your organizations, because you'd be surprised how much resources they might have for apps, or the learning and development team might have lots of resources around this sort of stuff that can support you. Also, there's external health support that can sometimes help with providing counseling, confidential counseling to people. So contact your HR or learning and development and see what resources they might have. All of these things can help. And YouTube's full of, podcasts and guides around this stuff. I do yoga through a YouTube tutorial, and it's fantastic. So I do yoga with Adrienne, completely free. I'm a complete novice. I do it with my wife. Makes me feel great. And I'm not somebody who used to do yoga, but since the pandemic, I realized it's something I needed to work on in terms of my mental health.
But yeah, that's all so far. I want to just tip I sometimes if I can't get to sleep, I listen to rain music. I find rain very calming. And that, yeah, I found a few on Spotify actually, which last quite a few hours as well. So that's something that helps me. Just thought I'd add that in.
Yeah, thank you for that. I use wave noises, and I picked that up from when my daughter couldn't sleep when she was a toddler. I'd play wave noises to her, and I found that I could sleep better with it. So whenever I can't sleep, I just play wave noises or rain noises. That's a great tip, Gemma. Thank you.
No problem.
So here's some further tips if you're feeling lonely. Open up and talk about it with someone, a friend, colleague, your GP, or a helpline, and we're going to give you in a little bit a few more resources to be able to recommend to others or use yourself. Be kind to yourself. The reality is, we all have that inner child, so be kind to that inner child. Speak kindly to yourself. You would never speak to somebody else the way you might speak to yourself. So give yourself space and time. Look after yourself. Connect with your community. So try finding a park run or join a club or volunteer. When we first moved here to the small town, my wife didn't know anybody, and she joined a couple of charities to help volunteer, and she met lots of people through that. And this is another key one. It's very easy through Instagram or social media to say, oh, everybody's so happy, I'm so miserable. The reality is to recognize that keeping up with the Joneses is a futile attempt. Most stuff online is fake. So don't compare yourself. You're only in competition with yourself. So look after yourself. So we're about to talk about the Don't Lose Hope charity, and Dom's going to talk us through. But just before that, here's some further help and support. So we've got Age UK, which has got a free phone advice line. Their website's fantastic for older people who might be feeling lonely. Anxiety UK's got some great guides around how to deal with anxiety and some great support. There's also CBT Online, which is an interactive site. So we talked about the thoughts, behavior, feeling. That's part of CBT, and CBT Online is great for that. Samaritans, I know lots of people have used Samaritans. It's a free phone number that you can ring, and they'll provide lots of support if you're feeling, if you're struggling. And then there's the Sane line where you can leave with a message with the name and number, and they'll call you back. This is a small list of the further help and support, and we are sending out a newsletter with further information where you can get help and support. But just recognize there's lots out there. And part of the support and help is examples of charities such as Don't Lose Hope. So I'm going to show some of the images from that as Dom talks about the charity, the great work they do. Hi, Dom, can you hear me? Dom, can you hear us? We might have lost Dom there, unfortunately.
Yeah, maybe he's lost connection.
Yeah.
But we did write a blog on Don't Lose Hope. We did sort of a bit of a spotlight feature. So if you go to the ILX Group blog, you can actually read about Don't Lose Hope and also sort of how we got involved with the charity. So yeah, it's really, they do great work there. They have lots of different types of support. Just looking at the photos now, you can see they have a man shed, I think they call it, where so men can go and sort of like go and talk and do some work at the same time. We feature it in the blog, but on one, like when it was they did a sort of session. I'm just going to get the blog open just so I do it justice. I don't want to not do it justice. So just bear with me one moment.
No problem. Thank you for that, Gemma.
Yeah, I just thought I'd quickly get some key points out of the blog while I've got it to hand. So yeah, just to summarise, they formed Don't Lose Hope because Nicola, she was working as a school counsellor. She saw that many children and young people she was helping also had families who needed some support as a unit. So they set up Don't Lose Hope to offer vital counselling and support services. And the counselling is sort of free for some families who are receiving state benefits, but then they have also affordable options for others in the community. And on average, they support around 120 people through their centre a week, including 50 in schools. and they have about 50 people in their community garden, which was a picture just before. And they also have a nightlight cafe and a listening service, which they support roughly 40 people a week. They look after to help children and young people who don't meet the criteria for the child and adolescent mental health service, which is an NHS service, and as I said, others from low-income families who haven't got the able to access private support. During the pandemic, they saw a huge amount of people seeking support, and so much so they're actually struggling to keep up with the waiting times because they're getting a bit longer. So they're hoping to expand their service, which is great. And so, as I said, the reason sort of we got involved is one of our colleagues, he sadly lost his son to death by suicide. So, and as I think we touched on it earlier, it's widely reported that male suicide accounts for around 70% of the suicides in the UK. So I think you said it earlier, often people can seem happy on the outside, but on the inside they're struggling a lot. Then the blog goes into a bit more detail around Andy's story, so definitely check it out, anyone who's listening would like to. But the story I was going to tell you was on Remembrance Sunday last year, they had a barbecue. So attendees of the parade could go and get a bacon sandwich or a roll and a drink just while they wandered around and chatted around the garden. And they ran this event specifically to engage with current and ex-service personnel who may have had feelings of isolation or anxiety. I think we hear a lot in the news after someone leaves the forces or while they're doing it as well. They can struggle a lot from also various different things like PTSD as well. So I thought it was a really great story and a really great event for them. And it was just so they could also find the garden and engage with other people on the day. And so within the blog itself as well, there's a link to the page on Don't Lose Hope that talks about the community garden and shed.
Fantastic.
And then the blog also, I won't go into too much detail, but just again, the blog then I looked at Samaritans, and there's some really good sort of guidance on Samaritans around if you're feeling worried about someone you know or someone or yourself is feeling sort of suicidal thoughts, and just some situations to look out for as well. So yeah, so that's a bit about Don't Lose Hope from me.
Thank you, Gemma. That was a great job. Is Dom reconnected? I can see his name still on the list, but I don't know if he's mad he can hear us or not.
So he's self-muted.
Okay. Well, you've done a great job about the charity, and they've just been featured on ITV News, which, you know, they had a break-in recently, which is a sad story, but they've used that as an opportunity to, you know, promote the charity and talk about the great work to do with, you know, young people and men, and creating these spaces where people can actually, you know, deal with this stuff instead of just doing that, suppress it, keep it in, or do the self-destructive stuff we talked about. So hopefully this session has allowed you to have an overview of some of these topics and go away and read more and find out more about the Don't Lose Hope charity and how you can be involved. And if you are struggling with any of this stuff, please, you know, try some of this or get some more help. If you see somebody else struggling, share with them some of the learnings from this and find out more. So what I want to finish off with is I want you to commit to doing one thing after this session. So what's your one takeaway? What are you going to do more of or less of? What are you going to try after this? So if you can type it in the chat box, that would be great, and Gemma will read it out to us.
Nothing so far, just let everyone know.
Okay.
Oh, so yeah, we had one person say get back into a healthy sleeping schedule, which makes sense. Another one said try the mood gym. I've not heard of that before, but that sounds really interesting.
It's a really good app.
Oh, okay, an app. Okay, brilliant.
I believe so.
And another person, they're going to try love themselves more and not compare themselves to others, which I think that's very good advice as well.
It is.
And reframing my thoughts and also using I can't do this yet. That's brilliant. Research and have conversations about mental health. I think that talking aspect is very important, because as Dom said earlier, if you start understanding that other people are having problems, then it helps to talk more. We've got eating well, exercise more, and challenge negative thoughts as they pop up. And someone's actually said talking openly is the best way to end the stigma around mental health and helps people feel more comfortable to ask for help. So thank you for talking, and thank you for contributing as well, and this person. And there's a link. So what we have got an email going out as a follow-up. So what I'll do is I'll see if we can add this link to that email so everyone can have it. But it's recommended by the clinical psychological, and also this person say, I love the fail part. It's a great way to reframe. Thanks for teaching me this new tool. That's fantastic. And then try to build healthy habits like journaling and yoga. And again, someone said thank you, and it was very informative, and I like the way you thought, like the way we put for failure as well. So
well,
yeah,
it's been a pleasure. Do this stuff and help others. Watch out. As a society, we've been isolated from each other. So look out for your colleagues. Look out for people around you. Look out for those people who might be struggling, and try and do things together. And if you're struggling, as I said, don't be afraid to reach out, because there's lots of help out there, but also other people want to help. So we need to take that journey together and risk together, and start, trying a bit of exercise, building this, Dom called it scaffolding earlier, build the scaffolding. So, it's not going to change overnight. It's about building that journey.
Sorry, guys, can anyone hear me?
We can hear you now, Dom.
Oh, fantastic. I want just one thing. I've been listening all the way through. Just one thing I really wanted to pass on to everyone. You mentioned it earlier about fears and anxieties. And again, it's something that for a lot of people, if they've not heard the fail technique, they've probably not heard the fears either. Now, as human beings, we're only born with two fears, and they are the fear of falling and the fear of being alone. So if you think back to being a parent, or with kids or anything like that, when you throw a child up in the air, they're scared on the way up because they know they're going to fall. People aren't born being scared of spiders, being scared of the dark. They're not being, that no one's being born with any other fears. Any other fear that you have, you've learnt from somewhere or someone. So if you're a person who is nervous about something, just please bear in mind that just by mentioning to someone else your nerves, if they're slightly nervous, it'll increase their anxiety and nerves even more. So you go all around the world, and again, the research is there. Everyone is born with the same two fears, the fear of being alone and the fear of falling. Everything else is a learnt fear. So if you're scared of spiders and you want to pass that fear on to your kids, feel free. Say you're scared of spiders. Or, as someone said in here the other day, put your big girl pants on and pick up the spider. And you can actually break the cycle of fear. And if you're someone who is lonely and scared and anxious, have a think and have a word with someone about how you can break that cycle, not for you, but also for all the other people that you affect. Because someone that sees you being nervous about something, that could then develop into a fear for someone else. So yeah, if the first attempt in learning is a new one and learning how to fail, think about fears, and actually you're only born with two fears. So anything you thought you were scared of, you're actually not. It's just someone that's told you to be scared of it.
Brilliant. And anything you can learn, unlearn or learn new habits. I love it, Dom. Thank you for that. Great insight. Excellent. So thank you very much. I'm going to stay online in case anybody has any further questions or comments or anything else they want to share. I've got plenty of time, but otherwise enjoy the rest of your day and keep up the good work. And Gemma, if you could read out any questions people might have, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. So nothing so far. And just thank you everyone for attending as well. So lots of thank yous. Someone said really glad they came, so that's brilliant. And yeah, so another person said, so thank you, have a great day. And then someone said this has really helped. I'm going to pass on some of this to someone who's having a difficult time. So that's great. And I think that's one of the purposes that we really wanted to get out of this, is that if maybe you're personally not struggling, and you might know someone who is. So I think that's one of our key objectives, was just to help pass on this knowledge and guidance. Nothing so far. I think that we'll just give it maybe a couple of minutes, Feras, and then.
Yeah, a couple more minutes.
Yeah. And thanks, Dom, for that end bit as well. I didn't know about the fears either, so that was really good to know.
Yeah, it's really quite surprising when you can sit there and feed people all the research and stuff, and there's loads of they've literally gone all over the world and basically put scary things in front of babies, and they're not scared of them because they haven't learned how to be scared of something. It is that, someone saying in the corner, "Oh, there's a spider." Suddenly you're scared of it. Or, my son was scared of dogs for the first 3 years of his life, apparently, because he spent more time with his mum, who didn't like dogs. He's now, he takes ours for walks 2 or 3 times a day. So it is
definitely contagious. So it's
yeah.
Absolutely.
Just on that topic, apologies, I'd missed this before, but one person's commented saying some people have deep phobias about things like spiders, and they need to talk about them to help them recover. So how do you sort of balance that, I suppose?
Yeah, 100%. And, Feras, you can pick up on this as well. I'm not saying that when you've got a fear and a phobia, it affects your life and you shouldn't talk to anyone because it will pass it on to them. What I'm saying is have a conversation and look to get some support from someone who can support. If you pass that on to your kids, that's where, do you want them to feel the same as you? But yeah, there's so many therapies out there now for phobias and support. And again, a couple of our counsellors who, and they're saying they're putting it down to the menopause at the moment, because again, there was a big Davina McCall thing on fairly recently, and they've suddenly developed this sort of anxiety and fear towards flying, whereas they've spent their whole lives flying around the world. But now they're a little bit older and they've got kids, and they've developed this fear of flying that they didn't realise they'd developed until they started thinking about flying. And again, just a little bit of reframing, a little bit of conversation, and there's some hypnotherapy ideas. There's lots of things that can support it. But yes, fears and phobias will develop due to chemical changes in the body and situations that come up. If you see a car accident, your brain is automatically going to store that as a point in time that you don't want to be involved in, so you might not want to drive. Or you see a house fire and suddenly you might not want to cook. But yeah, there are lots of ways that you can go about. And again, the Samaritans are great. There's the hypnotherapy, there's the online stuff. So yeah, fears and phobias are very real, but what I'm saying is you're only actually born with 2 fears. Everything else then develops. But as Barry said, because everything's learned, you can learn in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. So just be conscious of not passing on your fear on somebody who might be vulnerable, might be anxious in the first place, or a child. But actually, definitely share it with a professional or somebody who is open to it. I mean, one of the things I'm proud of with my wife, she has a fear of heights, but she took up rock climbing to get over it, but also to show our kids so that she doesn't pass it on. I don't especially like spiders. I'm not bothered by them. I don't especially like them, but I actively hold them in front of my kids so that they don't develop the fear around it. So even though I don't have a phobia, luckily, what's interesting about how our brains work, though, is if you see something in the news about something, sometimes your brain can treat it as if you've experienced it. So if you hear a lot about, muggings or car crashes or something horrific or plane crashes, suddenly your brain can treat that as if it has happened to you or somebody you love, and we can develop that fear or anxiety around it. So that's why we need to be careful with what we read in the news or what we watch, so that our brain doesn't get flooded with the fear chemicals if you're susceptible to it.
That's great. Thank you both. So I hope that helps the person who commented on that one. Just another person they're going to be looking out for others in the future, which is brilliant. And another thank you saying, very helpful to remind everyone about how to deal with anxiety and loneliness. And I think especially post-pandemic, a lot of people have been struggling. But I don't think there's any more comments. A few more attendees on. I don't know if anyone wanted to add anything. Maybe give you another minute or so, and then everyone will go for lunch.
Absolutely, lunch is really key.
Yeah.
On a serious note, make sure you take breaks, make sure you take lunches, move away from your desks.
Yeah, I think actually that was one of the things with working from home full time. That I don't know about you, but I probably didn't get enough away time from my desk, because you just get so focused, and then sometimes ended up working a bit longer hours just because all you did was go downstairs type of thing.
Yeah, it's really tempting, and you forget about it. It's something me and my wife work from home a lot of the time, not always. And when we actually specifically remind the other person to go sit in the garden while we're having our lunch or go for a walk, because it's easy to suddenly just be in the middle of things. So, and when she's not around, I put a little reminder on my computer that pops up, just remind me, to move away from your screen and go for a walk outside.
Yeah, actually getting to nature is definitely one of the good coping strategies for stress. But yeah, so a few more thanks are coming through. So I think that's going to be all the comments
Fantastic.
today and questions. So thanks again, Feras and Dom. That was a really brilliant session. And this session is being recorded, so it'll be available to watch on demand afterwards as well.
Lovely. Thank you for that, Dom.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Insight.
Awesome. Cheers. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.